History of Aviation podcast with Derrick, Beeler, David Rowe, and David Gorman.
Hey guys, and welcome to episode 44 of the History of Aviation podcast, a podcast exploring historical aircraft and aviation events. I'm Derrick Beeler, joined by David Rowe and Dave Gorman. In this episode, we'll be discussing the Cessna Skymaster. How's it going, David Rowe?
Oh, it's doing great. Busy time for me. Got a big NASCAR race coming up here in Bristol, and I'm prepping for it as hard and fast as I can. However, today I did take a momentary break. I saw a KC-135 flying over and ran outside. And typically KC-135s have C-17s or another 135, tanking. Not today. Today I caught an E3 tanking off of a KC-135.
Nice.
The one with the big radar dome on top, the AWACS.
Yes.
So that was a very, very surprising catch. So I've had a good day as far as aviation goes.
Good deal. Dave Gorman, how you doing, buddy?
I was doing fine, and now I'm kind of overcome with jealousy and a little rage.
Yes.
I also saw an E3 on ADSB. Did not see it in real life, but I was watching it as it was coming out of the west and heading towards Nashville and thinking, well, this looks promising. And then it disappeared. I know that they sometimes they're tracking on and off, but also ADSB, like a lot of things, were glitching a bit today.
Yes.
And that I saw it after it had gone up near Tri-Cities. It appeared to be heading towards Knoxville, and I'm watching the altitude and hoping and thinking, okay, are my batteries charged? And, where am I going to go? And then it went away. When it came back, it was heading into Georgia or somewhere. So always a good catch. But now you got it with the hookup. Is that what you're saying to us?
Yeah, they weren't actually hooked up. They were very, very close to it. They were either coming apart or coming together at the time. So was a big surprise to me because that's the first time I've actually caught that pair hooking up.
Well, that's awesome. That's a lot of airplane to have taken up that space at the same time, to have both of them going, because similar airframes, right?
Yeah, basically the same airplane, just two different uses. And so same size, and took up a good bit of space. And look for some pictures on the Aerophile Facebook page later tonight.
There we go.
Definitely looking for that.
That might be a topic in the future here, fellows, because, I realize it is something that we occasionally do see, and everybody's like, oh my God, look at that thing. What, it'd be great to run it down and see what it's capable of.
Well, exactly, because they are going away slowly but surely.
Definitely.
Well, we've got one today, right? That's doesn't appear to be going anywhere.
Yeah,
No.
The Cessna Skymaster is a unique twin-engine aircraft produced by Cessna Aircraft Company. It's commonly called the push-pull aircraft due to its unconventional engine configuration, with one engine in the front, another one in the rear. So, guys, let's dive into the history features of this remarkable aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely. This thing is, as you say, a very unique. The twin boom, the front and rear facing propellers. It also, it does look like it's got some age to it, and it does. It's been around a while, but very capable, very useful, used in civil and military applications, and they may be one of these at an airport near you.
Yeah, absolutely. They are still out there flying, plying their trade. And, they started out in 1961. So they have been around for a good long while and still working hard. Are they still in use with the fire departments out there in California?
I saw a mention about it that, that it was used for that, but I think the Broncos, the OB-10s, have kind of taken that over with the California Division of Forestry, I think is what the agency is called. Right. This plane did have quite a history as a spotter. Lots of good vantage points for aerial observation things, so it made sense that it would see some use, among other things, as a fire spotter.
Yeah, absolutely. The crazy part is this was, a Cessna design that the military just said, we like that. Let's have about 500 of those, please. And just they're off the shelf. Not purpose built for the military, but the military obviously found a great use for it. That big high wing and the big open windows, makes it a great observation platform.
Great platform, and some of them were armed with marking missiles and things so they could help with targeting and also with the rescue of downed pilots and things like that, I believe, right?
Yeah, very much so. I was just listening to a talk about it, and they were saying the ceiling on this aircraft is like 20,000 feet. But when the forward air controllers were flying it, they were typically 1,000 to 3,000 feet, and often much lower because they had to get down and low and slow to see the targets to confirm what they were seeing. So yeah, these guys were flying low and slow, and in harm's way, getting the spots marked out for the fast movers and the heavy ordnance.
Well, it's a real coordination of all of those things going on, and being in the middle of it, in the thick of it, they took fire, and there were some pilots who were shot down, of course, planes that were lost. It is a veteran of combat and welcome sight on the Warbird circuit. There are several of these that fly at air shows. See a bunch of them up in Oshkosh, and a lot of them are restored to military configuration. They're great looking. It's a hot looking plane.
No doubt. Yeah, and twin engine, that's the crazy part. It looks like a single engine plane, but it's got that second engine in the back. And that's a safety feature for this aircraft, having everything on the center line. If one of the engines goes out, you don't have adverse yaw and the plane twisting left or right, like a typical twin engine airplane with the engines out on the wings. So there's a safety factor too, having this aircraft have two engines in a straight line.
Yeah, it definitely was a different design, and something in the early 60s, like you said, when this began being produced, really kind of stood out from other similar aircraft. It was first marketed as a civilian aircraft, and like you said, the military saw some promise in it and said, "Hey, we kind of like this. It sure looks stable, with twin booms and that the elevator and everything that connecting the booms, but it's a good looking airplane." I was telling Derrick before we came on the air, my oldest brother and his wife flew in a Skymaster from New York State to Alaska with another couple, and Bob is 6'1", and his wife is 6 foot tall. They said it was cramped but comfortable, and a really fine nice plane to fly in, and they loved having all the windows that could see quite well on their flight up there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. If you look at the military version of the Skymaster on the right hand side, the military added extra windows in the lower section of the door so that the pilot had visibility out that side. So they, even though it's got big windows on it, they even added in more windows for visibility's sake. And I believe the military flew it with up to 3 people inside the cockpit, with all the radio equipment. That was another thing that was amazing. The Skymaster came out and it weighed like 4,400 pounds just as a civilian aircraft. When the military got done with it, it was up to 5,400 pounds.
Wow.
So there were a lot of radios, VHS, VFF, UHF, all the different radio bands. And then one of the interesting thing was they took the nose cone off the propeller to save some weight. So the military versions don't have nose cones on the propellers, but they still weigh 1,000 pounds more.
Well, every little bit helped, I suppose.
Exactly.
But,
I think that's exactly it. That was something that could be lost without, a performance hit.
well, now in military service, this was called the O2,
Correct. Yeah.
right?
The
O2?
Oscar Deuce.
Oscar Deuce.
Yeah.
The O1, the Bird Dog was not to be confused with it. This looks significantly different, but a lot of the same type of mission. But I don't know about you guys. I'm a little bit older than you, but this plane had a rather smashing screen role in the movie Bat 21.
Yes, it did.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Danny
Danny
Glover.
Glover. Yeah, pilot.
And it really, in my opinion, was quite the star of the movie. It acquitted itself well. So, our listeners, if you've seen Bat 21, then you're familiar with I would think with the O2.
And with forward air controllers, because it's a prime example of what those guys were doing in Vietnam, is out there directing fire and rescuing the downed pilots. So it's a really great movie just to get a feel for what a forward air controller had to go through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big part of that story was just keeping contact with Iceal Hamilton, I think was his name, who Bat 21, just keeping his spirits up and let them know, hey, I'm up here. You hear me? We haven't forgotten about you. And that was a plane that you could do that in. You could loiter and hopefully mark enemy advances and bring some pain to bear on the enemy as they were approaching. So it was a multi-role aircraft, that's for sure.
The talking about loitering, I did read where that it said that the O2 could remain airborne for about 4 hours on 2 engines, and if they shut down one of the engines, they could stay up for 7 hours by switching back and forth through the tanks and managing their fuel. So, I mean, they could stay up for a really long time if the action got hot and they needed to be there. They could remain on station for a very long time.
Was it when they just went to one engine, did they normally turn off the rear engine? Is that correct?
I believe so.
I did. Purposes.
Yeah, I read that there was some overheating issues with that rear engine apparently. So sometimes the rear engine would just quit and you wouldn't notice it because the front engine was doing such a good job. So yes, I believe the rear engine was the one that they would shut down.
Well, you were probably okay if it shut down in any other phase of operation except takeoff. That's where you needed both. And like you said, it became a pretty heavy aircraft in military use. You needed both to get you up in the air.
Absolutely. I think it said at 200 miles an hour it could fly versus the Bird Dog, which does like 100, which it replaced. And then the Bronco came along to replace the Skymaster, and it was considerably faster and heavier and better armed. That's another thing, this had no offensive weaponry on it, no machine guns or anything of that. It was just targeting, missiles and rockets that mark targets.
Now, see, I could have sworn in Iron Eagle 17 that they had one of these with Zuni rockets and a nuclear tipped warhead. Is that correct?
I have to go back and rewatch that because I am not sure. One of the interesting things is the B version of the Skymaster was a psyops plane for psychological warfare. They had loudspeakers on the plane and would fly low and talk to the Vietnamese soldiers and drop leaflets. So it was used for not only FAC spotting and that type of thing, but it was also used for psychological warfare.
Probably painted all black, I'm sure, for that type of mission.
Yeah, there is. As a matter of fact, the picture that I've got on my screen right now is from the Elgin Air Force Base, the Air Armaments Museum in Florida that I just went to this past summer. And yes, those are painted black for night operations. And if you look real close, you can see the lights are covered so that they flash upwards, but not downwards into the eyes of the pilot. That was one of the issues with the Bronco. The reason the Skymaster stayed in service so long is because it was better suited for night operations. It had the red lights in the cockpit that didn't destroy your night vision, whereas the Bronco didn't have that in the original versions. So, until they got night lights into the Bronco, the Skymaster remained their prime nighttime search and rescue and FACA aircraft.
Wow. Well, now this, as we said, initially was a civilian built for the civilian market, seating 4 or 5 people, I guess.
Yeah, I think 4 comfortably.
Variants, yeah, that's what my brother said. They had a lot of luggage for 2 weeks or so in Alaska.
Sure.
But it it was popular. There were other twins that you could buy that were more conventional, of course, in their layout. But this plane did have a market, and about close to 3,000 were built, right?
I believe so. Yes. There were 5. That was an interesting thing. I kept seeing different numbers for how many were for the military. There was numbers like 512, 532, 540. So I'm going to say there were more than 500, but less than 550 for the military and about 3,000 and so for the civilian market.
Well, next you're going to tell us exactly how many Corsairs were built.
12,000.
Yeah.
And yes, several thousand.
Whatever you've heard. Well, you know how it is. It's sometimes that information gets a little bit
it's a little fuzzy.
Get different sources. But we actually have Derrick, you were telling us before the show that you've got some primary information. You got
I have numbers here, guys.
Some primary source information about operating costs. Is that correct?
I have got cost of ownership for this airplane in 1966. It would cost you $28,189.58.
Good Lord, that seems like a bargain. That's only $14,000 an engine.
Exactly, and your annual inspection cost is about $2,210.
Wow.
Storage is about $840. Weather service is this is all about cost, $604.89. Insurance about $2,188.58. And your total there's $19,722. And if you bought one of these in 2022, you would pay roughly about $108,000.
They say it is still one of the more affordable twins out there.
Mm-hmm.
And as of Warbird, again, people may take a civilian one and go ahead and attempt to make it look like it was a military one, but
Mm-hmm.
there are plenty of them still out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But what was that price you said? 28,000 or so?
$28,189.58.
Where do I sign up?
Well, you'd have to get a time machine first. That would be the first step.
Time machine because we're going back almost 60 years for that price.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a good year. I'll tell you, 1966, good year.
No thing about it. Don't know a thing about it. So this thing had a maximum speed of about close to 200, I think you said.
Yeah, I saw some 199, about 205, 207. Yeah. So about 200 miles an hour max.
210 horsepower apiece on those engines?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. And Derrick, we were talking about most of these just had the two-bladed props, but I think there were some late turbo conversions that had triple-bladed propellers. And David, I was trying to find if that was on the front and the back.
Is that the Super Skymaster?
I think so. I don't know if it had triple blades on the front and the back. It would seem like they would want to do that just for symmetry.
You would think so, but I didn't pay that much attention to the front and the back propellers. Everything I saw were two-bladed. I didn't see any three. So I'm not sure. Can't say one way or the other.
Well, I'm sure an astute reader will, our listener will clue us into that and maybe send a picture, share it to our socials so we can see if that exists. But I think it did. I think I saw that there was at least a one of the engines on one of the later models had a triple bladed prop on it.
Well, it just makes sense because so many
Yeah,
civilian aircraft can upgrade from a 2 to a 3 blade to get a little bit better performance out of the engine, or just like you said, if they upgrade the engine, that it's better suited to it. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit to see that.
this plane had about a almost a 20-year production run, which is pretty good. It's a lot of competition in the civilian market at the time, so it probably created its own niche for that type of style with the twin, and was just wondering if it would be considered easier to fly with the both engines on the center line like that.
Well, it was because that was what Cessna did in their design phase. Was they were looking at the twins, and that adverse yaw issue is a big thing. If you go an engine goes out on one side or the other, the plane's going to pull to the side that the engine's still running. If it's all on the
Absolutely.
center line, it's all right down the middle, just like a single engine plane, and so you don't get that pull left or right, and it's a safety feature. I mean, to the that's the reason is it's just safer that way.
Yep. Now you were talking about fuel management and how you could extend your cruise and loiter time up to 6 or 7 hours, I believe. Where was the fuel
Right.
in this aircraft? In the wings?
I believe it was in the wings. Yes. Yeah. I think it's a traditional aircraft in that respect is all
Yeah,
the fuels goes in the wings.
that would make sense.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Also, this was a retractable landing gear.
That is correct. The very first model was not. It was fixed, but the Super Skymaster introduced a retractable landing gear, which is obviously a fuel savings and streamlining, and so that's what we're familiar with. Everybody picture on their screen is retractable. So
I think when I first saw one fly, and I for whatever reason I just didn't know much about it and did not expect to see the gear go up. And when I did, it looks like spider legs or something as they go back into the fuselage and
yeah,
hide away. But
yeah,
it's a
because
pretty interesting sequence.
yeah, exactly, because they go backwards. They go into the back, into like the clamshell area, and they
Yeah,
suck up in there and disappear.
yeah, they look like, is that safe? But I guess it is. Yeah, and then it really looks very streamlined and aerodynamic when it's got its wheels tucked away. So.
Absolutely, absolutely does.
Well, Derrick and I
Uh,
were also talking. There's one of these that's been up at McGee Tyson, just sitting outside for. He said it's been there a couple of years, and I know it's been a while. I hope it still flies. But these are still popular commercial aircraft that not commercial personal aircraft, and you see them on ADS-B from time to time, which is always cool.
yeah, absolutely. Something that I read. Have you ever heard of Brothers to the Rescue?
I actually remember that incident. And I think I referenced it a couple of months ago on another show, and I was thinking that it was maybe the MiG-23 that shot down these planes. But I remember that 1986 incident in off of the coast of Cuba.
Correct.
These guys were flying some relief flights and ran into some deadly interference from the Cuban Air Force.
Yeah, absolutely. Got shot down.
Wow.
So, you know, pretty
Well,
tough time.
yeah, MiG-29 versus a Skymaster, that's not a fair fight.
Not good odds.
No, it's it's like the final countdown when you've got F-14s versus zeros.
Wait, I thought that was real.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll have to go back and watch that one too. My
Yeah,
video list is getting long here with catching up on these things.
yeah, I think you need to check your references there, pal. I know that was real. That Typhoon was real, right?
Well, it looked real to me. It sure did.
Well, speaking of real, this aircraft is proudly served in a variety of ways. It also was in a lot of different countries, right, Dave?
Yeah, I was really surprised to see how many. not only was it used by the U.S. Air Force and Navy and Army, El Salvador used it during the Salvadoran Civil War. Who else was it? South Vietnam has a bunch of them left over from the Vietnam era. And I mean, Botswana, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Iran, Namibia, South Korea, Thailand, Zimbabwe. They're all over the world. So they've been exported around.
Yeah, it really was. And I think, price wise and size wise, it made sense for the type of mission that it could do. There are an awful lot of small countries in Central America and in Africa that had these in their military. So that, they're not counting the civilian operators in those countries. There were an awful lot of these in military service. Jamaica, Haiti, El Salvador, again, some of these Central American countries that and Caribbean countries that had them. You don't necessarily think of the Jamaican Air Force, but of course they have one, and the Jamaica Defense Force had them. So,
yeah, everybody needs an eye in the sky.
It's helpful. Now you mentioned, let's see here, that they weren't armed, but sometimes with the military they did have the marker rockets on that they would use, right?
Right. Well, here's what I've got on the list for armament. It does say they used a SUU-11A minigun pod. They had hard points for 4 different hard points on the outer wings for bomb racks, and they did use rocket launchers and bomblet dispensers. So it was armed, but not traditionally like we think of a fighter plane with machine guns and rockets and that kind of thing. It was more of a, drop it, smoke, and, mark a spot. It wasn't for offensive purposes. That was for the guys that came next.
Well, probably considering the missions that it flew with observation and marking, the pilots felt a little bit better having at least a little something they could get off the plane or out of the plane and towards the enemy.
Well, and the Skymasters were not armored. Not traditionally armored. So I did read that some of the pilots set on bulletproof vests in their seats just for that little bit of extra protection, because the aircraft is not, it doesn't have armor plating. So, and they are flying really low where, a guy with a machine gun can just pop you and, as you fly over, just shoot at you. So every little bit of protection helps those guys when they're operating.
Well, and you made me think with that reference about flying really low, back to Bat 21. And I should look up to see who was actually doing the flying in that movie. It wasn't Danny Glover, I'm told, but he was banking and cranking and yanking that aircraft. And it's very, very maneuverable. And down low, it sure looks cool flying them, close to the canopy and everything. But again, in that type of role, if you're on the ground and trying to get to the friendlies, and have helicopters directed to you, that would be a welcome sight to see and to hear.
Oh, absolutely. Those guys just loved seeing them. That means help is on the way. Somebody's coming.
And a distinctive noise with the engine noise with the twins. That was something that was
very
easy
much
to
so.
pick up on. So.
Right. Yeah. Because the airflow coming off the front engine into the back engine does create kind of a unique sound that's not like any other twin airplane.
Yeah. Well, it's a cool aircraft, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I did see a little short video clip that the Navy has I don't know how recent this is. This is probably a 5 or 10 years out time frame, but they had a single engine Skymaster with the engine in the back, and it had a multi-spectral can't speak, targeting system mounted in the nose. So it had the little, rotating eyes in the nose that was, using to spot things with. So that was a new use that I wasn't familiar with. It was a single engine Skymaster.
Well, we'll have to track down that airframe if it still exists. Maybe it's in Pensacola, hidden away or something.
Could very well be. It was white and red. It had looked like a test bed, and it was really interesting. It was flying over, and you could plainly see the rotating eyes looking around. So it was something I wasn't familiar with at all.
I'll look for that too. That's cool.
That is wild. And David Rowe over at Aerophile, how many pictures would you say you got, or videos of any Skymaster? Just the one behind you, or?
I probably have one or two more pictures of the Skymaster. I don't have any videos.
Gotcha.
I've seen them flying just to my eye, but I wasn't filming at the time, so I have seen them fly. But pictures, I've got a couple. I think there's one in Dayton as well. I might have a picture there as well. So there's a few out there, but
yeah, they've got an Air Force one, I believe, hanging from the ceiling up in Dayton.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Looks
absolutely. Good. So, but yeah, it's a pretty interesting airplane to see out there. And like I said, I just saw the one in my background in Florida this past year. It's just sitting right there, hot summer, and it's black, and the heat was just radiating off of it. So
I bet.
definitely that was a better off nighttime aircraft.
And folks can find the Aerophile at aerophile.com, as well as your same name on your Facebook and YouTube, correct?
That is correct. You can find me everywhere under Aerophile.
And Dave Gorman, what do you got going on social media? I know you had some concerts and whatnot going.
Oh, yeah. Got to go see my youngest brother's band play over the weekend and film that and put that up quickly. The Bagmen, check them out if you get a chance.
Definitely.
But I, you can find me on Instagram at It's Dave Gorman. You can find me on YouTube, Gormania, and also on Facebook. I post pictures and videos, and oftentimes they even are of planes. So check it out.
Definitely.
Hey, I've got a couple of trivia things I want to get in before we go.
Sure, let's do it.
All right. So, are you all familiar with a John Doolittle?
No.
That would be Jimmy Doolittle's son. He flew the Skymaster. He was trained at Holly Field. The son was forward air control training, relocated to Holly Field in the southwest corner of Elgin Air Force Base, Florida. Among those who completed this training at Holly Field was Lieutenant Colonel John Doolittle, son of James Doolittle.
No way.
So, yeah, that was a bit of knowledge I did not know. And,
so they both had twin engine experience, huh?
Yes, they did. And then here's a fun one. So we talked a couple of nicknames. Do you know any of the other nicknames of the Skymaster?
Suck and blow.
That is correct. So Oscar Deuce, the Duck, the Push Pull, Suck and Blow, the Engine Sandwich, Huff and Puff, and Coming and Going.
I like Huff and Puff. That's good.
I grew up hearing the suck and blow term for this aircraft. Yes.
Okay. So, but yeah, I just wanted to get those in because there's pretty interesting names.
Yeah, definitely.
I like it. And you can find all things History of Aviation Podcast in the description below. Check out our Facebook group at History of Aviation Podcast. There you can join and keep up with all the happenings with the podcast. Also, check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Our website is also listed in the description below. So definitely check us out. What an interesting plane. Enjoyed it, fellas.
Absolutely. Great stuff.
We learn as much about these planes as hopefully we're sharing with folks too. We've really adding a lot to our knowledge and
yes.
It's cool that we have so many. Last week we were talking about a German
the Horton
wing. Yeah, the Horton, the German flying wing. And
now we're on the suck and blow.
Another what a range of things that we get out there and talk about. So,
well, aviation is amazing with the technology advances. It's amazing what people come up with.
Absolutely, it is. For David Rowe, Dave Gorman, I'm Derrick Beeler. Thanks for listening to History of Aviation Podcast.
This is Joe Morse. You are listening to the History of Aviation podcast with Derrick Beeler, David Rowe, and David Gorman.